I'm excited to introduce Valerie Gobeil, Director of Talent Management and Learning at Workleap. Val, good to have you.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you here today to talk about a subject I'm passionate about, which is performance management. This is me, a little bit about me. I'm Director of Talent Management and Learning here at Workleap, where I've been for the past 6 years. And I lead a team whose main focus is to design and optimize key people experiences and processes to maximize engagement, performance, and development. And it just so happens that here at Workleap in the past year, we've been really rethinking our system around performance management, but also its relations to other key elements of the employee experience like progression, development, and compensation, which we've just rolled out. So my intention today is to really share with you some concrete examples of the questions we've been asking ourselves, that we're still asking ourselves, and some of the choices that we made that we think were the right choices for us to maybe inspire you. Please don't hold back on any questions. Nothing is out of boundaries. First of all, just as a very quick introduction, why is performance management a moment that matters? If it works and if it's done right, it really has a lot of potential, mostly to align business success with individual satisfaction, to motivate and foster growth of both the business and employees, and to reinforce trust and fairness. So it's really at the heart of that relationship between a business and its employees. The problem is it very rarely lives up to those aspirations. Um, there's very few people that I have met that have told me, I love our performance management system. And I've talked to a lot of people in HR in the past year because we were in that whole process. So neither HR nor managers nor individual contributors, or the majority of them, none of them really told me, we really have found a great system. We love it. The most common words that come out are, awkward, it's tedious, it's biased, it feels like a formality that we have to do, but we don't really know, why. So it really feels like it's something that must be done, but it's not an experience or a process that has been unlocked. And there's a lot of dissatisfaction around that. Most organizations are still on a traditional, annual review system, even though for years we have been talking about, there are problems with it. And we have heard of talks around agile performance management, but it's remained fairly fringe and not adopted. There's more and more talk about continuous performance management, and I want to dive into that a bit more today because it has a lot of potentials. Before that, so a few challenges that come up with most systems that we've known about, but just as a refresher, it's often anchored on self-promotion. So it's perceived by employees as their one opportunity to sell themselves because it doesn't come around very often. And we all know that not everyone is as comfortable with that self-promotion aspect. It can lead also to dampen or increasing some inequities in the workplace, depending on the personality and the person's ability to put forward some of their better accomplishments. It also is really gives really place to recency bias because no one can remember what happened 9 months ago, yet it's supposed to cover the whole year, and it's this one moment where we're asking to cover 12 months. That's not how we function as human beings. So really what ends up happening is people focus on the past few weeks, the past few months, and some things have a disproportionate impact. It's also very untimely. We live in a fast-paced environment, so we need to be talking about what's going well and not what's not going well, what needs to be course corrected in a lot more of a continuous manner. People actually hold back on giving feedback when they know that performance management is coming up because they just say, I'm going to do it in the process. And some things that we've observed, whereas feedback shouldn't be held back, because if something needs to be said, it needs to be said now. So in the fast-paced world that we live, we can't be always looking backwards and be holding back. It needs to be offered in a time. Feedback needs to be offered in a timely manner, and if we are going to be focusing on growth, also feedback also needs to be offered as a gift when it's relevant. Opacity. There very often isn't a strong, transparent link between what's being asked and what's being reported on in terms of performance management, and the impact it has on compensation, promotion, or other people processes. And that leads to a lot of frustration. People feel like they're losing their time, or they don't understand what their time investment leads to. So ultimately, this is my conclusion, it often feels dehumanizing. No one enjoys the process nor understands its real impact. Adam Grad said it in a way that was very eloquent. I found in an HBR article. He said, "It's a moment we all dread. Performance reviews are awkward. They're biased. They stick us in boxes and leave us waiting far too long for feedback." So clearly there's something wrong about it. And we hear a lot about how performance management is problematic or flawed. I want to spend most of the presentation today talking about how that can be changed, and we can really change that experience and how we did it at Workleap. So in doing our research, we wanted to find what are great systems that exist, and in mixing that with our own experience, we found a few key ingredients that, according to me, make it possible to change that experience from awkward and cringy to really motivating for employees and seamless, and so that it aligns with the rest of the work. The first ingredient is frequency. And that might sound really counterintuitive, because if it's such an awkward process, really, are we going to be doing this many times a year? And when we deployed the process, when we told people, we're actually going to be doing this a lot more often than once a year, and then you could just see the face of dread that people were were showing, because they didn't quite enjoy the process. But even if it's counterintuitive, if it's more frequent, it will have more impact, because the feedback that will be given will be timely, and it will be more motivating and more satisfying. The thing is, frequency absolutely has to go with the second point, which is simplicity. If you have it more often, if you have those pulse checks more often, you can also keep it a lot more simple, because you don't feel like you need to cover all angles and cover 12 months, and it's the one shot to get data on performance in the past year. So when I say keep it simple, I mean keep it simple in the questions, keep it simple in the experience, and really think of what's a tool or a product that can support that. It's really fascinating how good UX and how our product can really support the simplicity of that experience. And good UX can make this experience for everybody participating in the process, managers, peers, and employees, really a lot more enjoyable. So keep that in mind. We use Office Vibe without surprise, but that focus on simplicity in the product really can make an impact on the experience that people are having. The third ingredient is intentionality. So that might sound a little bit more obscure, but my invitation is to not try to copy. Of course, ChatGPT can craft some great performance management review questions for you, or questions that should be had at a monthly or quarterly check-in between manager and employee. Other organizations have done a good job at crafting their own performance management system, and you could be inspired by that. But I'm really inviting you to ask yourself, what's valued and important in your organizations? Is it based on what people do? Is that what's valued, the results? Is it at an individual level, or is it really team performance that matters? Do you care about how it's done, and the different behaviors and the how the work is delivered, or it's really more about the results and the deliverables? Are there elements that stand out? Is innovation really something that's important in your organization? If it's not, then don't ask, how much of this person been innovating. Is potential something that you really want to measure and assess? You get the picture, but my message is really, ask yourselves, yes, there are good practices, but what's what's the real measure of what counts in your organization. You can do that by doing some interviews with key leaders, by observing what's really valued when we want to underline, wow, that was great, we want to celebrate that. What is it that we want to celebrate? So being intentional on what counts for your organizations. And if the choices that you make really align with what's truly valued, there will be coherence. People will buy into it more because they'll be like, yes, that is true, that we must talk about that because that is what is valued in our organization. So that was for intentionality. Last ingredient is transparency on the impact. Do not make it a black box. So many people, go through performance management and don't really know what happens with what came out. Yes, they have a conversation with their managers. They assume that it will be taken into account with regards to compensation, but it's not clear and there isn't transparency. And then, of course, there's a scale in transparency. We can go really far, but try to go as far as you're comfortable to go as an organization, because being clear on why we're doing that and what impact it can really have and how employees can really have be empowered to that's something that employees have a power on their own performance. And if you make it clear to them, reaching this level of performance or answering to this can lead to a promotion. This is a process, or it can lead to a salary increase. This in this manner, it will make it a lot more motivating for people to actually want to talk about their performance, ask questions on how they can increase their performance. They know what it leads to, and they just feel a lot more valued because they feel like it's time well invested. Ultimately, having those key ingredients does lead to a performance management system that's a lot more satisfying and where people can really feel like they can act and thrive. Okay, here I'm going to be sharing the choices that we made at Workleap. So I'm gonna, not everything's figured on that slide, but with frequency, we really questioned ourselves. We wanted to go towards something that was the most continuous possible. On the other hand, if you sort of say performance management happens all the time and you have nothing to support that, it won't happen. If something happens all the time, then it doesn't happen. So we decided that we were going to go with a more intentional moment at every quarter. So we said we have a quarterly review. Of course, there could be conversations that sustain that in the midst of the quarter, during the one-on-ones with managers, and many conversations are opportunities to talk about performance, but there's a quarterly review. We also kept it very simple in terms of simplicity. Our reviews are under 10 questions. They're very quick. As mentioned, they're done in Office Vibe, and the product supports the experience. Also, there's reminders. It's pleasant for users to fill those reviews. Intentionality. That's where we spent a lot of our energy and a lot of our thinking towards. And we landed on 3 dimensions, basically, that were important at Workleap. So the first dimension is accomplishments. So we really, that has to do with results, but not all team functions with goals. Some teams functions with, SLAs or key hours to reach. Others, they each have their own distinct reality, and we thought accomplishments was the one that encompassed it the best. So the way we defined an accomplishment is basically it's a result or an action taken that has meaningfully contributed either to the organization, the function, or the team's success. So in that section, we're really going to be observing how has this person contributed to moving the needle and bringing us in the right direction where we want to go as a team, as a function, or at an organizational level. We ask we ask peers to give feedback on that. We ask each individual to do a self-review, and the manager is going to be taking that into account and assessing and giving some qualitative as well as a rating on that. The second question is on behaviors, because we really questioned ourselves and realized, yes, reaching results is super important. Workleap is really in a moment of growth, but the way that the work is done is also extremely important. So we said how the work is done is important, and what are those key behaviors? For us, they're the ones that align with our 5 Workleap values. So we have 5 Workleap values, and in that behavior section, we really evaluate or assess how much people embody those behaviors, those 5 behaviors. And finally, the last section is on development, and that was also very intentional. We wanted to make sure that the performance reviews were an occasion to look back on what was done in the quarter, but also really to look forward on the next quarter and to focus on to give real feedback on what could be done for growth. So in that section, there are basically 2 questions where the manager will say, what are the strengths that you have and that you are applying now that contribute to your performance and your impact that you need, that we invite you to continue putting into action? And what's a development area that if you want to increase your performance or your impact, you can start doing or start doing more of? So really, that means that at our reviews, we have a dimension of looking back of what was done, but we really have an intentional focus also on growth. And then on the right, we see that, and on the right, we have the part on transparency. So what happens is, based on the data that's the quantitative data that's extracted from those sections, we place people on what we call a performance matrix. And we're also transparent with people on, what are the thresholds in terms of the average that you need to reach to be in each of the box. We chose a 12-box grid. And we share people where they are placed on the performance matrix. And each of the colors on these performance matrix has an impact on potential for promotion and on compensation. So in order to be considered for promotion, you need to be minimally at a certain box. And every time there's a salary review, there's of course a market component, but we also take into consideration the performance position. So each box is associated with, each color basically is associated with a percentage of increase in salary. So we wanted to be really transparent and clear on that so that people know if I aim for that, this is what I think I can aspire to in terms of impact on my compensation. So those are the main foundations of the choices that we have made at Workleap. And we've really kept those 4 ingredients in mind. But I would lie to you if I told you that nothing's on our mind and that we've figured everything out. So I want to be, again, really open with you and sharing what's on our mind. So we're still asking ourselves some questions. We're still at the moment of rollout. And one really important element that's been coming to us is calibration. How do you make sure that managers, first of all, set expectations at the beginning of the quarter in a fair and equitable manner, and that it's sort of the same baseline for everyone? And how do you make sure that afterwards the ratings that they give are also fair and equitable? And in that exercise, we really wanted to have fairness at the heart of our preoccupations, but also to keep a simple process. Because if you have a process where you need to have, 10 calibration meetings at the beginning of the quarter, and then calibrations meetings between each leader and in the committee and with HRBPs, then the process becomes heavy. And remember, we're doing it 4 times a year. So I forgot to change my slide again. So we didn't want at the end of every quarter to have a really, really heavy calibration process, but we still needed to put something in place to make sure that, fairness there was a perception of fairness and that ensued to real fairness, so that people would really buy in and not feel that there was too much subjectivity in the way that people were being assessed. So as I said, we're still finding that right balance, but we want to make sure that there's a clear meaning on what the ratings mean. We've created some cheat sheets for managers. We've created some guidelines on how to align on expectations. And we are going to be having sessions between managers and with HRBPs to make sure that that calibration is done right. And that will, that reinforces a trust in our system from employees, because it's really a concern we've been hearing. The second one is, how do we incorporate even more in the flow of work? So yes, we have these quarterly reviews and they're simple and they're straightforward, but they still happen at a moment, at the end of the quarter where it's pretty heavy. There's a lot of things to happen. So how do we make sure that we have products that can really do the right prompts and send the right prompts at the right moment? How do we collect feedback, a little bit more throughout the quarter, so that come the time of the review, it's easy to surface and to really um, pull out the essential elements. And the third question is, how do we remain agile? So it's not a good practice to be changing your performance management system every year, every 2 years. You need to have a strong foundation, and you need for people to know what to expect. And if it changes every year, it's going to downplay the trust and credibility. On the other hand, you need to remain, again, I'm going to repeat that it's fast paced and some things change and our realities change. So we need to remain aware of where are the places where our system is not getting the things right, and we need to be making those tweaks. So again, finding that balance between maintaining that strong foundation so employees have really can really incorporate what the foundations of performance management in the organization, but still making sure we can make some tweaks and some improvements. And we want to keep making sure that those links between progression, development, and compensation are being clear for people, and that our different processes really reinforce each other. The last element I'm going to leave you with is, what I believe is the next frontier in performance management, and is closer than you think. There are a lot of products that are already doing research on that. You can read about it, but flow of work again. So just-in-time feedback based on data and interaction. So imagine if you just closed a project, in Asana, you just reached a milestone, and there's an automatic prompt that is sent to every collaborator to share feedback on their experience. For manager to be able to jot down elements on, how did that go, anything to mention that should be taken into account in terms of performance. So if our products can really and our work environment can really prompt us to give that feedback at the right time, and can use all the data that's already collected and all, with regards to interaction in the workplace to feed performance management, that would really facilitate people's life. AI insights, so collecting information and converting it into insights. That's also something that managers dream of. They have to, at the moment of reviews, they have to take stock of the peer reviews, the self reviews, any recognition has been sent their team members' ways, maybe notes from their one-on-ones. What if AI could, really aggregate that and really surface some insights and suggest some, ratings, some qualitative feedback to offer to team members? We're close to that, but that would again really facilitate people's life. And analytics, we know that there is a strong relationship between performance and engagement. But what if you could have analytics, predictive analytics also, that could surface insights into the links between engagement and performance? We see a decline in this metric. What impact could it have on performance, or vice versa? We see a decline in performance in that team. What are some things to watch out for? Some levers that we can activate in order to get back to where we want in terms of both performance and engagement. So that's what I think is coming soon, and what I'm really excited about.
Thank you so much, Val. If you'll just quickly go back to that slide that we had on there, I just want to say, if you are looking for actionable templates that you can use to kickstart your own agile performance management process, we do have a agile performance management process starter kit. So that was available on the previous slide. We've got a QR code that you can download and access that resource. We'll also make it available in our emails following this call. But let's jump into a little bit of Q&A, because we've had some pretty great questions that have come in here. So Val, how did we develop our questions? Was it with the HR team, or with the leaders or coaches for each department? Just walk us through our process for question development.
Yeah. So we did a first iteration internally in the HR team. Again, I want to emphasize that we really wanted to keep it simple because it was going to happen on a quarterly review. So we did have a little bit of a committee, the project group that crafted the first set of questions. And then what we decided to do is we wanted to test it and de-risk it. We didn't want to deploy to 475 employees. So we did a pilot and we involved 15 team members, 3 levels. So, VP or C level, VP, C level or director, first line manager, and individual contributor. And we wanted these people to have very different realities. So we had, in a reality, we had a dev team, we had a customer support team, we had a product management team. And you understand the picture. The idea is we wanted to make sure that these questions worked for people's different realities, and it didn't feel like we were trying to fit, a circle into a square in terms of roles and the types of questions that were being asked. So we asked them to take a quarter and to really test as if they were doing the quarterly review. They tested it, and we also created a material for them to log, how long did it take them? What was easy? What was hard? What did they not understand? What are things that they loved? What are things that they would improve? And based on that, we really made some refinements to our questions themselves. And it also gave us the confidence that, okay, it can work in these different realities. And really some of the feedback was unanimous around, it's easy, it's straightforward, and it works for a reality.
It's great. I mean, and I've been part of some of the enablement and the rolling out of this myself, obviously, right? And so this next question I think is a really interesting one. How would you best introduce the idea of a quarterly performance review process if the organization as a whole has never previously implemented any performance reviews?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe I'll invite you to read that article by Adam Grant, and we can maybe share somewhere. I thought it was interesting because his premise was, if people hate performance management systems, why not get rid of them altogether? And he states a lot of arguments on why it's actually a very bad idea to not have any performance management. So maybe the first step would be to really push for having a performance management system. If you say there's no performance management system, it's still happening, but it's happening in an obscure way that people don't know what they're being held to, and it's going to be frustrated because people are held to expectations, and we do look at certain results, and that's how we make business decisions. And so even if there's no formal system, there is one. So I'd invite you to question, like, what governs our informal performance management system, and having transparency on what is the actual process can be really a great lever, and a lot more motivating for people to get on board, than if there is one, but people don't actually know what are the forces that govern our system, our informal system that's in place. So first step, be clear on what the system is. And then, on our end, again, there was some pushback of going towards a quarterly performance review, but we actually calculated the time that was invested. It was not a longer time investment than the annual review. And it was also considered a lot better of a time investment. People's satisfaction with the process in the pilot that came out of the pilot was tripled from what we had as an initial process. So it was easy to say, yes, it will happen more often, but it's a good time investment. It feels satisfying. It feels motivating to people.
That's great. So last question, we'll cap it off with this one. How can we, as HR professionals listening to this, make sure that employees are empowered to take ownership of their own development?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super good point. That's our philosophy at Workleap. Also, we actually say that development is a shared responsibility between manager and team member, but each team member has the main responsibility to determine where they want to develop towards and what they want to develop towards. It's not a question of, like, feeding. This is going to be your next step, and we've identified you for this. We're not so much in a place where there's career ladder. We talk about the matrix now, when people can really choose where they want to evolve in the career matrix. There's a lot more fluidity in roles than what there used to be, and so it's for individuals to ask themselves, like, where was a place there that I see myself evolving into. But we have to be honest also, the manager does have a role to play, because the manager is frontline seeing their team member interacting, and it helps to have somebody, have that view on us, that can observe us and that can give feedback. So what a few things we've done is the development section is also present in the self-review. So we also ask employees to question themselves on, like, what are the things that they could start doing or start doing more of. And we strongly encourage employees to solicit that feedback. We've made asking feedback course. No, we haven't made yet. It's going to be made in advance of the first quarterly review, but a course on how to ask for feedback. And so enabling those employees to really have those reflections on development and go seek the feedback they need is something that we've thought would be a good strategy. But time will tell.
Amazing. Well, with that, Val, thank you so much for this session. I hope everybody has enjoyed it, and very much appreciate taking the time.
Thank you so much, Rob. Have a great day.